The Trap Set will always be available for free, but we rely on donations from our listeners. Please visit our website at thetrapset.net and click donate. Subscribe to our show on iTunes, and if you enjoy what you hear, give us a review.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to The Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. This week we're playing you a recording from our recent live show at the Steve Allen Theater in Los Angeles, and it's a long one, so let's get down to it.
Our first guest has distinguished herself as one of the most exciting drummers of her generation, with a 1-2 punch of an intensely creative compositional instinct and an unstoppable groove. You know her from her incredible band Warpaint, but she's recently also been working with Kurt Weill. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Stella Mozgawa.
Check, check, check.
How's it going, Stella?
Very good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Very honored.
So for those of these people in the audience that don't know you, we're just going to review some of your personal stats first.
Great.
We're going to get to it. So where are you from?
Sydney, Australia.
And your parents are Polish, are they not?
That's correct.
What did they do when you were growing up?
My mum was a Polish pop star.
And what was her band called? What was her band called?
Called Pro Contra. I'm sure you've all heard of it.
Pro Contra?
Yeah.
I've seen their videos on YouTube, and they were like, would you say they were like the Polish ABBA?
Yeah, like ABBA, a little bit of Jefferson Airplane maybe, but very Soviet. Yeah.
Sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it's your kind of stuff.
But then when you were in Australia, what were your parents doing?
They were attempting to be professional musicians for about 10 years, I think.
What do you mean by attempting?
Well, I think they thought they would get their lucky break. I'm not sure what they thought they would do, but they were playing as like a restaurant band for the first 10 or 12 years of my life. So.
And they were hoping like a record producer would come into the restaurant.
A restaurant producer would come around and give
a
them
restaurant
a big break.
producer would come out and say, you should be in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Didn't work out, but they still love music and very supportive. Can't say a bad thing about them.
So even though it was rough for them, they didn't dissuade you from pursuing a career in music yourself?
No, I think they warned me that it's something that's not easy to make a living doing, that's for sure. So they encouraged like a higher education. And
was there a particular moment when you fell in love with music, or was it just kind of always what you wanted to do?
I think I always loved it. I didn't always think that it was what I was going to do.
What did you think you were going to do?
I don't know, something boring like be a lawyer. Yeah. No offense.
Guess it depends on what kind of lawyer you are.
Yeah, I guess so. I think just like something that you know that you're going to make an income, and you know that you do A, B, and C, and you can achieve something. Whereas music is a lot more ephemeral, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever think, fuck it, I'm going to go back and be a
lawyer?
Yeah.
No.
Is there anything else you would ever want to do?
No, not really. Not at this point. I think everything that I've wanted to do, I can express through playing music or making music, composing, or whatever it is.
So tell us how you wound up here in Los Angeles in the band Warpaint.
Well, I was playing in a band that moved to New York, and
how old were you at the time?
I was 19 when I first came to America.
So you were just like, no college, I'm going to do
2
music.
years of college.
Okay.
Yeah, half smart. And then I think the last, like going into my third year, I kind of took what's referred to as a gap year. And I came to America with this band, and then somehow through that met Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Who?
Flea. He's
I heard of him.
He's a bass player. He's pretty good. And
he knows how to work a sock.
Yes, he does. knows how to slap at a bass. And I made a record with him in 2008, I think, and then I met the girls of Warpaint.
Which
the
record
women
did
of
you
Warpaint.
make? Which record did you make with Flea?
He made a solo record.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so he asked you to play drums on his record.
Yes, I thought it was a lie, but it was very strange.
Did you move into his house?
I lived in his guest house for 4 months.
In Malibu?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a common story. There's other drummers that have done that.
With Flea?
Didn't
man.
like John Theodore move into Flea's guest house or
I think
something?
that was later. That was like after he was famous.
Okay, so he was following your lead.
I think so,
Yeah, I think so.
definitely. Yeah.
So what are you working on right now?
Making a new Warpaint record. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
How's it going to be different? Do you have a different concept, or are you just letting it happen?
Well, we're recording in our rehearsal space, which is pretty new. And we're doing it with a gentleman who produced the first Warpaint EP that I wasn't involved with, but he's a long-time friend of the girls and mine. His name's Jacob Berkovici. So it's really like kind of home style recording at the moment.
Is it more comfortable that way?
I think initially maybe there's like an adjustment period because you're used to, with like a big time producer, you have like a extended pre-production period that wasn't really there. We just kind of went straight into it and then had to adjust. So, but right now it's really exciting.
How are you feeling about it?
Great, very positive.
Do you feel like you're personally growing as an artist? Is that something that you even like think about, or does it just happen?
Yeah, I think everyone thinks about whether they're able to express themselves fully within the context of being in a band, because each member of the band does a lot of stuff separately, and if you can't kind of translate the stuff that you learn in those different environments into the band and help nourish it, then it's kind of worthless, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So, when I initially interviewed you, you were really excited that I had interviewed Fred Armisen, the next guy that's coming out here.
Yeah.
Why?
I guess I'm just, at the moment, a bigger fan of comedy than I am of music.
I think that happened to me, too. I mean, the reason why I do this podcast is because when I was touring, I didn't want to listen to music during the day.
Yep.
I wanted to listen to people talk. Like, my ears were burnt out of music.
Yes.
And now I work as a composer, and by the end of the day, I can't go see music most of the time.
What do you listen to? Do you watch stand-up? Do you watch comedy shows and
I
stuff?
go to stand-up, and I listen to lots of podcasts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
But, so, how did you discover Fred's work as a comedian?
I think I definitely saw him on SNL years ago, but I started watching Portlandia on tour about a year and a half ago, and I got really into it.
You got obsessed with it.
I got pretty obsessed with it.
What is it about his style that resonates with you?
I think just Portlandia in general appeals to me because I don't think there's a more modern show on television in terms of something that like shines a light on the modern world and modern assholes and whatever. You know?
Oh, it's about assholes?
Yeah, I think so. A little bit, you know, or just peculiar people, you know.
Do you have any particular favorite Fred bits or Fred characters?
Probably, I think the most bewitching performance I've seen of Fred's is at Largo about probably 6 months ago or something. And my friend was playing drums with Susanna Hoffs.
Okay.
And he got up dressed as Keith Moon and was wielding a bottle of red wine and wishing everyone Happy New Year's. And then he just ripped through like 3 or 4 Who songs verbatim on the drums, and it was amazing. Yeah, that's my favourite Fred Armisen moment.
Well, you have some questions for Fred, don't you?
Sure do.
So, everybody give a hand for Stella Mozgawa.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
Okay, folks. You know our next guest from his brilliant comedic work on Saturday Night Live, Portlandia, and documentary now, but he started off his career as a drummer in Trenchmouth and later as a drummer for Blue Man Group. And aside from his work as a comedian, he still performs regularly on the Late Night with Seth Meyers' 8G Band, and he recently released a new album with soft rock group Blue Jean Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Fred Armisen, Jens Hanneman himself.
Thanks, man. That's so nice. All
Hello.
right.
First of all,
yeah.
thank you for the kind words. That was really nice. And I think I've worked out an impression of Joe, because because one thing I noticed is that there is a lot of space between some of your words, and I seem to never hear you breathing.
That gets edited out in post.
Where did your parents grow up? Something like that. I'm working on it. I'm
All
gonna
right.
get there. But thank you so much. That was really nice. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate
Pleasure.
it.
Yeah.
Now time for an epic takedown by
and-
Stella Mozgawa.
And
Here we go.
and your band is really great. I know that sounds like something that someone would say, but I do think you guys are great.
That is very sweet.
Yes.
Street. That's really street.
It's very street.
Yeah.
It's a very
That's super
street thing to
dude.
say.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Joe, you know I love you. I wasn't making fun of you. I'm just
I don't know that you love me, but I believe it. I'll believe it.
Okay.
Thanks, Fred.
Shall we?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. So we'll start with some garden variety drumming questions. What was the first song that you learned how to play on the drums?
I remember when I was a little kid, I would listen. My mom had, it was the family Beatle records, and I remember "I Am the Walrus." So I don't even think it was with drumsticks. I had these like sort of metal things. I don't know what they were. They were in the house. So so I would say that's my earliest memory of
Nice.
trying to play drums. And I think it was after the Beatles broke up and everything, but I think everyone just goes through a phase where we all just discover the Beatles.
Yeah.
That's my assumption. But I think it's true, though. I think people keep rediscovering them.
That's true.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your first band.
Well, the first band I had was a hardcore punk band called the KGB, and this was in high school, and it was with my friend Kenny Young, who used to introduce me to hardcore bands, and he was so into hardcore, and he just like really opened my whole world up, with punk, and like a lot of American hardcore bands, many British bands like GBH he really liked, some of the New York bands, and so we just tried to have we just had a band that was a sort of imitation of, we're in high school. But we did play a lot, and we practiced all the time. We had songs like My School and Fight Back. Fight Back was like System Sucks, we all know it. That's how it's...
Wait, what's your hardcore band now?
Crisis of Conformity.
Is it similar?
Yeah, something like that. Except Crisis of Conformity is more like nuanced. We were just kids, and I'm really glad that it happened. Like I have a couple of pictures of us playing, and I'm really so happy that was a part of my life, because I don't look back at those pictures and think, oh, how lame, or like, how could I have my hair that way? Like I had a mohawk and stuff, and I remember back then thinking, in the future, I'm going to be really proud of the fact that I had a mohawk, and then now I am. I'm like, hey, good job, little Freddie.
Yeah. How old were you? When was your first mohawk?
I think maybe 16, maybe 15.
That's great.
It was all like based on like Matthew Ashman and Annabella Lewin and Joe Strummer. That's like because they had mohawks, and I was just like, that just seemed like the way to go.
You were compelled.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it was more of the sort of like, it was fully shaved, but it wasn't like, I didn't always have it like spiky and like sticking up.
Right.
Sometimes they did, but it was kind of like...
Fluffy?
Not fluffy, but like stringy.
Okay. You might have already answered this next question, but I'll ask it anyway. Weirdest band name you've ever had?
10-Speed and Brown Shoe. Which was like... That was after... It was named after a TV show, but when I lived in Chicago, me and this guy, Elliot, I think it was just two drummers. I mean, we might have played one show, maybe not, but we.
Were you a 10-Speed and Brown Shoe fan? The show?
I was. It was too early in my existence to like even think of the idea of like retro or like celebrating TV shows, but so I guess. But you know,
Here's a tidbit: the guy that did the music for 10-Speed and Brown Shoe's name is Mike Post, and he did the Rockford Files, Law and Order, A-Team, MacGyver, etc., etc. He's like the king of TV music.
oh, this is good. This is good to know.
I'm going to send him this podcast.
and I think Jeff Goldblum was in it.
Yeah, right. Okay, sorry,
Nice.
Stella.
No, that's totally all right. I love it. It's a good tendril.
That's a tangent.
Yeah, I call it a tendril.
Okay, tendril.
Fred, is there a fill that you cannot resist air drumming to?
My version of air drumming is sort of like lap drumming or
Okay.
steering wheel drumming.
Sure.
And well, yeah, jeez. This is so easy in that it just seems so related. But the fact that Clem Burke is coming out in a little while, there is a fill during the song "Atomic" that's just waiting to happen. It's just waiting. The whole song to me is waiting for that fill to come up. And so every time it happens, I'm like, there's no way I can't do that. So it would be on my knees or on my steering wheel.
Great.
Yeah.
I won't make you do it.
I feel
but-
bad that like I haven't asked you any of these questions. Is there a air drumming fill that you can't resist?
Well, apart from In the Air Tonight, which is very obvious,
Yeah.
there's the Song for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age.
Wow,
one
okay.
that I think every drummer.
You mean no one knows? Or
No.
oh, okay.
Daga, daga, da, 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 da,
Okay,
da.
yeah, the beginning.
Yeah, someone here knows it.
Dave Grohl.
Yeah, right. Dave Grohl, the Grohl.
Don't you think that I feel like something is happening with Phil Collins? You know, things
Yes,
just kind
he's
of come in
coming back.
cycles. I feel like everyone is about to do like a Hall & Oates with him. That's like
Definitely.
he is the king.
We're going to talk
Yes.
about Phil later. It's
Yeah.
it's actually part of our panel questions that we
Oh,
have
okay.
So
prepared.
exciting.
Yeah.
Great. What is the biggest fuck up you've ever made on stage?
Wow, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
I've often had trouble finding the one, and then what happens is I think of something as the one and it's wrong, right? So someone will do an intro, and then my brain decides that that's going to be the one, and I can't fight it. I'm like, will we ever get this intro right? So there are countless times where I fully messed up beginnings of songs.
The one just eludes you.
It just,
Yeah.
it's when it's easy, great.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just a song starts weird, and I'm like, why
Sure.
did you come up with a weird beginning?
Do you get that when you're listening to music sometimes and you're
Often.
like, where is
Yeah.
the fucking one?
But I like that feeling.
Yeah. It's
I d-
okay
I-
for the first like 30 seconds, but then when it's like 5 minutes into the song and you're still lost, it just sends anxiety through my body.
I like songs that you can hear the beat in two different ways.
Right. What's one of those for you?
I have a Blonde Redhead song stuck in my head that's
Ooh.
like that, and it when the intro starts on a beat other than one, that's
Right.
what does it.
Yeah.
Also,
I
Rock
got-
and Roll by Led Zeppelin is
That's-
another good example.
That's a really hard one.
Which one?
In that way.
Rock and Roll by
Right.
Led Zeppelin because it starts
Yeah,
on
yeah,
an
yeah.
and.
Yes.
Drum talk, people. I mean.
Also, that I always get wrong. Because
Right.
to me, and this is what
Black
makes me
Dog.
not a great drummer, is that it should be like it should be like double time. So like, but you know, but that's wrong. That's wrong.
Yeah.
That's why you know. And I asked the guys in Led Zeppelin if I could play, and they were like, "No."
Who did you ask?
I asked Robert and Jimmy, and I was like, "Can I play?" This is a made-up story, but I'm going to continue with it. anyway.
It's believable though.
So I was like, "Can I play?" And they're like, "We're not a band anymore." I'm like, "Can I play that one song?" And they're like, "No."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Are you sure?" And they said, "Yes." There's how many ways can we say no? And I said, "Well, just get back to me when you think about it."
Didn't they just do a reunion?
They did
Recently,
actually. They
yeah.
did in London. They had a sort of, I think, an anniversary
Yeah.
show. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There we go. Great story. Great fake story. Yeah.
That was a pretty good fake story. I tried not to make it too insane. Just like,
Yeah.
That's
Just
made
believable
it all the
enough.
more believable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Now, in your experience, how does the collaborative process differ in comedy as opposed to music? Do you find it easier to express a concentrated vision, or does it rely as deeply on compromise and diplomacy?
It's unfortunately, it's very similar to being in a band. Very, very much so. When Carrie and I put stuff together for Portlandia, we definitely approach, the way the DVD covers look, the way that the sketches are set up. John Kreisel as well. We really do. It is very much like a band. It's like It's also the fact that like each season is kind of like a tour and an album. What is this album going to be? We compare it to albums. We're like, is this going to be like Odelay? Is this going to what is this season going to be? And so, I would say it's the one thing that's better than being in a band is the food situation. Because like when you're in a band, every meal is like it's like molasses. It takes so long. Like, where do you want to eat? Well, I only want healthy food. Well, they know a really cool place up the street. Let's all go there. No, well, I don't want to go there because that's too greasy for me. And then you're caught in a thing of hunger. And when you're on a TV show, you're on your own. It's great. You're like, I'm hungry now. I'm going to go have some sushi, and this is my business. So that's the one difference. Other than that, it's all the same.
It sounds divine.
It is great, yeah.
Is dining out with Warpaint like molasses?
Well, one of them's here, so I can't really say. But no, it's. I think we've all figured out that everyone does need to do exactly what they need to do. We don't need
so
to
you
eat
break off into
as
your
a
own.
family. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great when that revelation happens. Like,
Absolutely.
wait, we don't have to eat at the same restaurant.
It's a must.
See you guys in
It's
an
a
hour.
must. Yeah.
No. That fight is just an endless fight. And you go hungry the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, when I first met Fred, I was on tour with Marnie Stern, and me and the other guy in the band would make Marnie come eat with us wherever we would go, and we would eat unhealthy crap every night. And Marnie loved it, but she was like, "You guys are making me fat." It was ridiculous.
So
Lots of wings.
Right.
One more question for Fred?
One more?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. This one's a really good one. What is your favorite drummer joke?
Oh, my favorite drummer joke is what do you call a person who hangs out with musicians?
What?
A drummer.
Give it up for Fred Armisen.
Today's episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by our good friends at Revival Drum Shop. Revival is community-oriented, and they feature a one-of-a-kind collection of vintage and handmade custom drums, eclectic percussion, lessons, and rentals. They're truly one of the great drum shops of the world, and you can check them out the next time you're in Portland, Oregon, or online at revivaldrumshop.com.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. Our next guest, this is really special. Our next guest is best known as the drummer for the pioneering rock band Blondie. But over the course of his 40-plus year career, he's worked with everyone from Bob Dylan to the Eurythmics, from Pete Townsend to the Melvins. His heroes include Ringo Starr, Hal Blaine, and Keith Moon, but there's no doubt that he is equally influential to everyone who's followed him. Simply put, he's one of the all-time greats. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Clem Burke.
Hi, you guys.
Hi, Clem.
I have a really good drummer joke. I'll start it off since I'm next to a really fantastic comedian here, so amongst your many other attributes. What's the difference between an extra-large pizza and a jazz drummer?
Wait, what's the difference between an extra-large pizza and a jazz drummer?
Yeah.
What is it?
An extra-large pizza can feed a family of 4.
Zing.
Sorry, you jazz drummers. What's happening, guys?
Clem came out. He's got a really cool-looking David Bowie shirt on. And you look great. You've got nice shoes, a nice blazer.
These boots are like 35, 40 years old. In fact, they're iconic. Like every fucking thing else nowadays, right?
Clem, you're my favorite drummer of all time. I don't exaggerate when I say that.
Thank you.
All of your drum parts are so deeply embedded in my brain and in my spine and my bones. I just know them all so well. And they've all stood the test of time. I can't believe how much feeling and how much of your personality is just in all these drum parts. Everything on E to the Beat, oh my God, I cannot believe how great the drumming is on that. That, to me, Blondie is all about the drums. Everyone is great in the band, but it is
Don't tell Debbie that.
No, but, well, that's one of the things that I have carried with me in the way that you approached being a drummer in a band, is that you seem very comfortable in your position in the band. You dressed great, or I'll use the present tense, you dressed great. You have such a great style. Even your kit even has a great, it physically looks really cool. How it's set up. It's very, I remember that all the toms are very flat. Everything was sort of angular. And I like that.
Unlike my hair.
Wait, Fred, when was the first time you saw Clem play?
I saw them on, there used to be like these videos they put out for E to the Beat. It was like the whole album is them playing, but then I saw them on Saturday Night Live. And Clem just, to me, stole the show. But I like that you're not trying to show anybody up. You're like, this is my position. I'm the drummer in the band. I'm going to make this part of the stage look great, but enjoy the rest of the band. So
yeah, you're right about that. But, it was no coincidence to me what Debbie Harry has become. In fact, she's quite iconic. But
like everything else these fucking days.
Yeah, but when I first met Debbie, I was really drawn to her charisma, and fact, being a drummer, you need to be around other people to have a band. And I've said this many times before, I was looking for my David Bowie or my Mark Bolan or my Mick Jagger. And in fact, Debbie fulfilled that for me, and it's just a kind of a coincidence that she's a woman. So I was never really taken aback by the fact that people found her so iconic.
But that's interesting that you didn't come out of the gate saying, I wanted to be so-and-so, or I wanted to be this drummer or that drummer. You were looking for someone who you can make seem even better than they were.
Yeah, I wanted to collaborate.
Yeah. That's definitely the best part about being in a band. How did you come up with the way that your kit looked? Because it seems to me that there was some thought put into it. It just looks so aesthetically. It's very symmetrical. It's
called OCD, Fred.
But how in those early days? Now it's easy to look back at all the punk bands and new wave bands and think, okay, everything was so angular. But back then, what did that come from? I see no roots in anything else back in music. I can't point to anything and say, well, obviously you were doing so and so.
Well, I was very influenced by Keith Moon and the Red Sparkle kit that I, in fact, still use today.
The Premier one.
Well, I'm endorsed by DW now because, unfortunately, I was with Premier for 30 years, but they had a lot of ups and downs. But funny enough, when I went to Premier, we had to go to the factory in Leicester in the UK and really investigate the entire factory to find any sort of Red Sparkle rap at the time. Like it just didn't exist. Although one of their most famous drum sets was the Red Sparkle Keith Moon set. So that was kind of why I wanted to get the Red Sparkle kit. And Keith's drums were set up pretty much pretty symmetrical as well. And I think Ringo's kit was basically, a standard jazz drummers kit. It was kind of set up the way Ringo's kit or Mitch Mitchell's kit or John Bonham's kit for that matter. And that's kind of where I got the symmetry from, actually. I know what you're saying because I had my tom like completely flat, but also Jerry Nolan from the New York Dolls was a major influence on my playing, as well as Tommy Ramone was too. But Jerry kind of had that sort of big band drummer aesthetic as well, and he really was about presentation. He was the first person to cut his hair off on the whole New York scene back in the day when everyone had the sort of, shag hairdos. He showed up with a rockabilly haircut, and he was very fashion conscious. And he was a really great drummer, and unfortunately, he's not here anymore. But Jerry Nolan was a major influence on my playing and my whole aesthetic as far as presentation goes. So might start with Keith Moon and Jerry Nolan, actually, and Dino Danelli.
But what about the speed of your hands? Because none of those drummers, I would say Keith Moon a little bit, but there was something about, you were just really, really busy on the toms in not a show-offy way, really, really fast. Who is that? Who could that have been?
I have a drum and bugle corps background, in a way, and I played rudimental bass drum, which probably some people know what that is and some people don't. It's basically playing, having a bass drum strapped on you and playing all the rudiments on it. The rudimental bass drum involves playing, like I said, the rudiments, and that's not just banging like that on the bass drum. And it also involves a bit of show-offness in some ways, because you kind of lead the whole pack. And I was kind of being mentored to become this rudimental bass drum guy when I was a kid.
And where was that?
Where was that?
Yeah.
That was in a place called Bayonne, New Jersey, which is 3,000 miles from here.
Bayonne's in the house.
Bayonne is in the house. And New Jersey, I can't say enough about great things about New Jersey. I mean, all I have to say is 2 words: Bruce Springsteen.
Who's your favorite ever? Who is your you mentioned Bruce Springsteen backstage. Who is the ultimate? Who's the ultimate inspiration as far as bands go?
As far as bands, as far as the whole aging process, and as far as being a performer, it's Bruce for me, big time. The way he conducts himself in public, and how he is still seemingly so excited about being on stage and about performing and things like that, which is, I really like to keep that feeling. And when I perform, I like to really feel as though I'm in the audience watching something that I really would like to look at. So I kind of put it out that way. The greatest living rock star is undoubtedly Bruce Springsteen. So as far as drummers, the greatest band to ever be were the Beatles. So the greatest drummer to ever live was Ringo Starr. That kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Woo! Rock drummers, so.
When you started, when you were in the band, right? You're coming up with these drum parts. Did anyone turn around to you and say, like, you gotta tone it down? No. Or did they say, great, you're making us great? This is before you were Clem Burke. There must have been someone in the band who wasn't used to it.
Yeah, well, Blondie, when we started the band, we were basically a trio with Debbie singing, so I go back to the roots of other great trios, whether it be The Who or Bad Company, or, music, the band, like the musicians, not with the singer, so there's a lot of space. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of trying to emulate people like Hal Blaine, Earl Palmer, who was, if anybody saw the Fats Domino documentary the other night on PBS, they feature Earl in that. And, Hal Blaine and Earl Palmer were my 2 favorite drummers, unbeknownst to me, because they basically played on every hit record in the 60s between the 2 of them, and, were never credited. So I was always kind of trying to play for the song, my interpretation of the song. I think that's really important, and I always kind of wanted to be kind of a pop star. I didn't really care about being a muso. I didn't care about being a rock star. To me, there's a big difference between being like a rock and roll star and a rock star, let's say. I kind of go on the side of the rock and roll star. So there was like a lot of stuff that was put into, like you were saying, my presentation, and I don't know, it kind of shaped me a lot, I guess.
Fred, has anybody ever said that to you? Tone it down? Like in a musical situation or in a comedic situation?
Yeah, definitely. Because you learn that.
Fred was a very busy drummer. When I first met Fred and saw him, he was in a band called Trenchmouth in Chicago, and it was like an angular, mathy rock band, and Fred was very busy, and it was awesome. But I wonder if anybody ever told you to tone it down.
No one in the band, but playing with different people a little bit. And then comedy-wise, definitely, you learn at Saturday Night Live to relax a little bit and not, scratch too hard to try to get the audience's attention. The message being like, there's a TV camera there, don't worry, they can see you. I loved learning that as I was going. I was like, oh yeah, you don't have to scream so much. So that's like a version of what that was.
Okay.
Can I just get back to that one thing though? I feel like with the song "Dreaming" that a lot of people always mention when they talk about my playing, and it's like Joey Ramone's favorite Blondie song, and a lot of people always say that's like their favorite song. I really feel like I got away with something there because that is sort of the drums are all over the place, and
it's my favorite drumming song ever.
Yeah, it's funny because
favorite.
it was just kind of like we were just doing like a pass, like it wasn't really meant to be the actual track. I always think it could have been a bigger record if it didn't have those crazy drums, but.
It's a huge hit song. It's a huge hit record. Blondie is a hit-making band.
Wake up.
But what possessed you during it to ride on the floor like that and then up on the rack? And also the way you tuned them was like they're pretty low, but they're really resonant. Mm-hmm. What was that? I mean, it's a probably a hard question to answer. That band practice. What was happening at that band practice where you're like, I'm going to keep doing this? It's genius. I'm glad you did it, but what was going through your head?
I think I was just trying to show off.
When you first started with Blondie, do you remember the first time you got a drum roadie? Do you remember the first time you were like, oh, I don't have to set up my drums?
Yeah, I do remember that. It was a gentleman called Michael Sticka, who is a legendary figure on the New York rock scene. He's featured actually quite a bit. If anyone's read Please Kill Me. Mm-hmm. Michael went around the world with me, and he was a great comrade and a great friend to have. And I used to take my drums on the subway, from New Jersey. I would be carrying my drums on the fucking subway, right? And then the whole thing was the checker cab thing, that was a real asset to getting around New York with the gear. Mm-hmm. Now there's no checker cabs, but now it's gone full circle because now there's like SUV cabs and things like that. But I remember one time I was unloading my stuff out of a checker cab in front of a club downtown somewhere, and I opened the door, and of course the next thing you know, the door got taken off while I was taking my gear out. I just I didn't know what to do. I just kind of took my stuff and left. And the evolution of the reason the jazz drummers play such a small bass drum is because when you think about it, big band drummers, the jazz drummers, they had like huge bass, like John Bonham type bass. But it was so you could get it into a cab. They condensed their drum set, and that's kind of where the whole evolution of bebop drumming sound came from, just the fact that I need a smaller kit in order to fit it into this taxi cab to get to the village gate, or something like that. So.
Did it feel like a big achievement when somebody else was setting them up for you? Like,
no.
I'm a star now, or
no. You know what? I really, really feel as though like the crew people are the most important people on any tour, and I really feel as like everyone's in it together. I don't want to say the cliche of we're a family, like start singing like a Sister Sledge song or something, but. I think the crew people are the greatest, and I would never took for granted the fact that there was somebody there to help me. And the drummer is a bit of a dilemma, as we know. I mean, Stella, did you carry your gear around? Like, you probably had to carry it around Sydney somewhere and get it to A to B. How did you do it?
Well, I had a car pretty early on.
Oh, there you go.
But before then, luckily a lot of venues have a house kit. But rehearsals, I'd rehearse almost every day after school with my high school band, and that would be, a good hour of setting up and breaking down. And then also my mom wouldn't let me play after she had arrived back from work, so I had like a 1 hour window to rehearse, and I had a tiny room, so I had to set up and then unpack and then put it up like above my wardrobe, which was a bit of a mission every day.
Yeah,
But
it's
it
crazy.
didn't, you know, when you're enthusiastic, you don't
Yeah.
even pay attention to that.
I mean, I was talking to Fabrizio Moriarty, the drummer from the Strokes, and he would like set his drums up in the closet, like in his apartment, his dad's apartment, you know, because there was like nowhere to play. And
Yeah.
I mean, he just like endured that, you know, and just New York is a really weird way to kind of like try to get ahead type of place. And back then, it was a little easier in a lot of ways. The checkered cabs being one thing, but
I think New York taxi companies should have drummer cabs, right? When is that coming up in the political campaigns right now? It never
Bernie
comes
Sanders.
up.
No, Bernie Sanders is advocating for
Yeah.
You're saying something.
Yeah.
It never gets discussed.
Now that you were talking about space and about drumming in New York City, did you have a drum kit? When was the first time you had a drum kit set up in your home?
well, when I was growing up as a kid in Bayonne, New Jersey, I had a drum kit set up in my front room. Yeah, that was when I started playing, which was when I was about 10 years old.
Right.
Yeah, so good classic Japanese Sears or whatever.
Folks, give it up for Clem Burke, Elvis Ramon. Okay?
Thanks for doing this, Joe. It's really cool.
So we're going to open it up to a panel discussion so anybody can chime in. First of all, we'll ask this question. Drummers are usually the most expendable member of the band. I've talked to lots of drummers, and it's a heartbreaking life for lots of us. Now, I mean, they're viewed as the most expendable. I see you shaking your head, Fred. They're viewed as the most expendable, even though they're the most essential. But, I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, do you feel like, Stella, do you feel like your job is ever in jeopardy? Do you feel like you have agency in your life? Like, are you worried about things like that?
Not till now. I think the main reason why I don't really think about that kind of stuff is because I tend to be involved in the composition side of things, or I'm there not only just to be like a machine,
Right.
a drumming machine.
You are a drumming machine. You're also
But
a
also,
composing machine.
Yeah, or just being involved creatively is really, it's satisfying, but it's also, it's a big part of why I feel quite secure in all of my jobs.
Have you ever been fired from a band?
No.
Fred, have you ever been fired from a band?
Ooh, I don't think so.
Or fired from anything?
I might have been without even knowing it.
Like the soft fire where they just stop calling you?
Yeah, maybe something like that. There's no way that I've gone through my whole career and not have been fired. At some point, I'm sure.
Have you ever fired somebody else?
Oh, yeah.
What's your style for doing that?
Early days of being in a band is all about sort of like, it's almost like walking away from all your friends. You know, there's like the one friend everyone walks away from and you just reform the band anyway, stuff like that. I mean...
Yeah, we're gonna break up and then you get together with three of the other guys.
I just think early days of being in a band is like, it's all ambition, so you just don't even think about people's feelings. Or that was, I think, the common theme, that everyone was just like, we're going to make it. There's like a constant drive that's like, we have to sacrifice this person in the band, you know.
Well, one thing that you had said before when we spoke is that when you became less ambitious about music and kind of focused your attention on comedy, that's when you started really enjoying your contemporaries' music again.
Yes, I was able to sort of listen to everyone's music without having that envy of like, oh, how come they got a record deal or whatever. It was really nice. So I still am discovering bands from the 90s.
Now, Clem, you've been a member of a band for a long time, and you're fundamental to that band's identity. But have you ever been fired from a band?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I got fired from the Ramones, didn't I?
Well, that was just like a one-night thing, right?
I kind of I played a couple of shows, but I kind of had a mandate that I really didn't want to do it, but I would twist my arm and I'll do it. And then as I started to do it, I was like, yeah, I really want to do this. It's really cool.
Did they have you dress any differently when you were in their band?
Well, yeah, I had just gone off a tour. There's a guy called Gary Kerfitz was the Ramones manager, and he also managed Eurythmics in the U.S. And I had been asked to join the Ramones about 3 or 4 times through the course of their career. And I had just come off this Eurythmics tour, and I had a sort of more of a a DA, so I was Elvis Ramon, as you mentioned, and the Ramones had a giant flight case full of leather jackets, so you just like take one and put it on
in all sizes.
And and then I was doing an album with Pete Townsend, and I was really enjoying that, and I was there with him in Twickenham at his studio, the Boathouse, for about a month, and I became friends with some people around, and it was kind of like lunchtime, and I went up to this room with my friend who was the guitar tech. I don't want to mention his name at the time, and he just put out this couple big lines of coke, right? So then we did the coke at lunchtime, right? So then, like, just after I did the coke, there's a knock on the door. It's Pete's assistant. Pete would like to talk to you. I'm like, okay. So then I'm sitting with Pete, and he's at his desk, and he's like, we decided we're going to stop the project for a while after, So technically, I wasn't really fired. The whole thing got shut down. The album didn't. It was called White City. I wound up playing on a few songs.
White City, indeed.
But right, there you go. So it's a housing project in London. But
sure.
You could say I got fired by Pete Townsend, yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool, though. Getting anything by Pete Townsend, if you put in any verb and Pete Townsend is doing it, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean, was it mind-blowing
really
to work with him, having grown up
absolutely.
idolizing The Who?
Absolutely. It was really one of the high points for me, yeah. It was great. Yeah. We basically spent a couple of weeks just jamming in the studio, and was giving drum lessons to Justine Frischman. You know who she is? She was like about 13 years old, and she wanted to know how to play the drums. So it was, it was funny. It was a funny time. But now that I'm old, I really do feel pretty secure in my position in life as far as that. I mean.
Do you feel old? You said you're now that you're old. Do you feel
I'm
old?
a lot older than I'm not 18 years old when we started Blondie, so I'm old. Yeah.
But you're still a rock musician. I mean, it's what you do now.
There's a bit of a Peter Pan syndrome going on here, yeah. But I mean, you asked about, do you feel? I do feel like I'm a dinosaur in many ways. Absolutely, 100%, yeah.
But you hang out with lots of young musicians. I mean, you were talking about Fabrizio and some other folks backstage.
Yeah, sure, yeah. But I mean, rock and roll is like, I've shown this analogy before. It's like jazz music was at the advent of rock and roll. Jazz was pop music,
right,
for like our parents or for your grandparents or whatever. And then all of a sudden, rock and roll came along, and jazz wasn't popular music anymore. And rock and roll is not pop music.
Can't feed a family of four.
Yeah, right, exactly. But then, like, rock and roll destroyed jazz, and whatever you want to call is going on in pop music today is destroying rock and roll.
What do you want to call what's going on in pop music today?
It's maybe millennial music. How about that, Or toddler music. I don't know. I mean, they sound like nursery rhymes to me. I don't know.
That's what the jazz musicians said about rock and roll.
No, exactly.
So I guess
that's
you
the
really
analogy
are old,
that
Clem.
I'm making that analogy because it's in a fact. It's like people have been predicting that rock and roll is dead for a long time, and I don't know. I'm just, with David passing, it really had a big impact on me, and I'd been preparing myself for people like Dylan and McCartney and et cetera to die. Everyone dies. And, I don't want to end this on such a bummer, but...
well, you know who's not going to die? Me.
No, Liam Gallagher's
I'm gonna
not
beat it.
Die. Liam Gallagher's going to live forever.
Yes, he's going to live forever, yeah.
All right, so here's another topic that came up a little bit earlier. I think you brought it up, Fred, is Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Okay, Phil Collins is making a comeback. He's reissuing his classic 80s albums. He's got an autobiography coming out next year. I know all this because I'm trying to get him on the show. Mm-hmm. So Clem, in the 80s, Blondie and Phil Collins were marketed in very different ways. But I wonder, are you a fan?
Oh, yeah. I saw Genesis. I saw them at Princeton University. I saw them at the Felt Forum in New York. It was no surprise to me that Phil became the singer, because if you saw him with Peter Gabriel, he was always singing along with Peter. But just interestingly enough, the last gig that Blondie did back in the 80s, before we stopped and then we got back together, was at JFK Stadium in Philadelphia, and it was Genesis headlining Elvis Costello, Blondie, and Flock of Seagulls. Okay? So it goes with Stella's question about the biggest screw up. I guess I used enough profanity tonight. So the biggest screw up.
You can never use enough profanity.
This is right before this big screw up. Phil Collins had come up to me and said, "You know what? You're a really good drummer. I'm looking forward to see you play." Which I thought, wow, that's great, because Phil Collins is a great drummer. So the first song, there's actually someone in the house here who go unmentioned, was involved in this as well. We're playing to 50,000 people in JFK Stadium, and the song Rapture has this hand clap thing that I think I kind of came up with it at the time, so we used a Linn drum to duplicate that. And this was before I wasn't playing the clicks or anything, but the Linn drum was supposed to be coming through my monitor system, and I was keying off. The hand claps I had to play obviously in time with the hand claps. I'm in a stadium with 50,000 people with the sound is anyway, it's echoing like crazy, and the click track is not in my monitors, so I can hear it bouncing off the wall of the stadium. And there's no way I can play in sync with it. Meanwhile, Phil Collins is like over here, and I'm looking for my drum.
He's
tech.
the one that cut the power to your monitors.
No,
That's why he told you he loved your drumming.
I'm looking for my drum tech. It turns out our whole crew had been locked inside the crew trailer by Elvis Costello's road crew. Ha ha ha! Right. So then I'm at the biggest dilemma for a drummer is. You can't go over to the monitor guy. Turn that fucker up.
Yeah.
You're stuck. You're sitting down. You're sitting duck. You're like a non-moving target, basically. So basically, I decided I was really fucking pissed off, right? So I took my gong that I had and I threw it at the monitor guy, and cymbals started flying.
You threw a gong?
Yeah. And
Strong.
it was, and ironically, that was the very last Blondie gig until 1997.
Wow.
So anyway, things do screw up sometime.
Fred, do you have any personal connection to Phil Collins' music?
I think that his drumming is it's such a you can recognize it right away. We all know that Phil, but even the rest of
The
it,
pocket.
you can always recognize those toms anywhere. Singing drummer, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those hits were great pop songs.
The great pop songs, and the production was cool.
Yeah.
He was a pioneer.
What's the song? Is it Abacab?
Yeah, by Genesis.
That's a Genesis. That's a good one.
That's a great song.
Stella.
I mean it. It's
Any
a
Phil
great,
thoughts?
simple pop song.
I'm more of a fan of him as a session drummer, to be honest.
Brian Eno? He played on Brian Eno
Another
records?
Green World and
Yeah.
Before and After Science. Those are some of my favorite drumming moments of all time. So
Phil Collins is a badass,
Big Phil
and he
fan.
deserves to be
man.
recognized as such.
Yeah,
not
I
just
agree.
an
Fred's
adult
right,
contemporary
he'll
star.
come around.
He's going to come back.
Yeah.
It's all going to happen here.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the interview that turns it all around. Well, I was really sad. He wrote this open letter to his fans about 5 years ago,
I heard
where
about
he was
that.
like, I never wanted to be perceived as this schlocky, adult contemporary star. I was divorced and I just wrote these songs, and that's what happened. They became big hits. I thought I was going to be like a fusion drummer or a session drummer, and they became big hits, and I went with it. And now people think I'm a joke, and I can't play anymore. I have back issues, and I've been thinking about killing myself. This is a letter that he wrote to I don't really know. It was an open letter.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about killing myself, and it's been really dark. And seems like he's making a comeback now. So
Well, it's interesting that he reached out. So that's a good sign that at least he was trying to connect with people instead of hiding away with it. So that's something positive.
yeah, and the other thing is I talk about him a lot. I have a mild obsession with him for some reason. I actually did not like his music when I was a kid in the 80s, and then I came to it later. And, talking to lots of drummers that are really hip right now, everybody loves Phil Collins. So, anyways.
When you interview him, and you will, don't bring up that you didn't like his music in the beginning.
I think that's a good arc, though, right?
No, people do not. People are everyone is sensitive. Any people really hang on to anything like that, just omit that. He doesn't need to know that. Trust me. Just go right into I was always a fan. People are just so in their head all the time, everybody. And you see how like sensitive he is. He wrote
Yeah,
that
he's
letter.
very. I mean,
So
listen
just
to the
leave-
songs that he wrote.
You're inviting him as a guest. Have him,
Yeah.
you know, let it be a nice time for him. So he'll be in his car and he'll go like, what a nice experience that was.
You know, Fred, I was never a fan of your comedy at first, but I've
Yeah,
really
no
come
one
around
wants
to
to
it.
hear
Just kidding. Who are some of the drummers that, when you were on SNL, that you were really excited to meet?
Well, Steve Gadd was a drummer on one of the shows. I think he was playing with Paul Simon, and I found him, and I was like, "Hi," and we have a minute. Will you? This is like during rehearsals. Will you please show me 50 ways to leave your lover? Right? Because these opportunities, I'm not going to be on SNL forever. I'm not going to be able to talk to this guy near a drum set.
Have you always been able to do that? Just walk up to people and be like, "Hi, I'm Fred. Teach me."
I always feel like the clock is ticking. Like,
Yeah.
this is it. This is the only chance I have. He brings me over to the kit and he showed me the beat. It's so much more complicated than I ever imagined. It's beautiful. It makes no sense. The actual beat, and he was also like, you think of like, it's such a complicated drum beat, but he kind of talked like a regular. He's so like,
He's a Rochester guy,
he's a
man.
regular guy. I don't know. So yeah, it's a kind of some kind of Latin beat, and it was just insane. It's the hi-hat left hand
And foot.
and
Yeah.
foot, but it's close hi-hat, then you hit it, as opposed to it's
Yeah.
like, it's upside down.
It's kind of like parade drumming, sort of.
Yeah, that's where it comes from
Yeah.
his marching background.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Okay.
But anyway, he
Well,
showed
you
it to
can
me,
hear
and
that
yeah,
you can
it's
hear it sounds like parade drumming, though.
oh, the snare part.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
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 So what a great.
Who else
beat.
did you meet on SNL that you were really excited about, drumming wise?
The two drummers from Beyonce's band I thought were great.
Yeah.
I thought they were really great on the show, and I became friends with Abe Laboriel from Paul McCartney's
Mhm.
band, who's a great. I don't know if you've had him on yet, but
Not yet.
what a great person. And then, for some reason, when Modest Mouse played, I loved something
Yeah.
about the drumming. They're so respectful of the drums. That band is so. They really come from the drums, and that was great.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah.
Stella, who have you met in your travels that you were freaking out about? Drummer or non-drummer?
Drummer or non-drummer? I met Steve Jones.
Okay.
That was pretty amazing.
Did you have an interaction?
No, not really. It was just I wanted to avoid him at all costs. But I was
Because you
telling
didn't want to ruin it?
Yeah, exactly. But I think the one that I was telling you about when we had our interview was Nick Cave.
Yeah. He
Was a
made
really
juice
good
for
one.
you.
He made juice for all of us.
He
And then I
brought a
made him a
juicer on
juice and
tour.
it was disgusting. And I was so ashamed, but he was very polite about it. I just put everything in there.
Can we talk about Steve Jones for a second? You mean the Sex Pistols Steve
Yeah.
Jones, right? One of the
You can talk about whatever you want,
great,
Fred.
great,
You're the
one of the
star.
greatest, sweetest
Yeah, you're the
people.
star.
Yeah.
He is really sweet. He's a California guy.
Music lover. Such
Not a
music
fan
lover.
of England.
Yeah.
He's got the thickest London accent I have ever heard. That is it almost sounds like a caricature of a London person. And one time I was like, "Do you ever get to go back to England?" And he's like, "Not a fan." He's a great guy. When you meet him again, do get to know him. He's great.
I won't avoid him.
Yeah, don't avoid him.
Oh, okay. I thought we were talking about drummer. I didn't actually know that you said Steve Jones.
Steve Jones, yeah.
That Stella did not. I had a band with Steve. We called Checkered Past right after Blondie.
That was
Yeah.
loud. Sorry.
What's that?
I just said woo, but into the
We
mic.
went on tour with Rat and Duran Duran and things like that.
Round
It
and
was
round.
pretty interesting. Steve's a great guy. His radio show's cool if you haven't heard it. I guess probably.
Yeah, Stella,
everyone's
you
probably
really should
heard
have
it.
talked to him. The clock is
Straight
ticking,
up.
as Fred
Straight
says.
He has a problem with attractive women.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mean like he's attracted to attracted women, and that's his problem?
He has a problem with attractive
Do you have a
women.
problem with attracted women?
No.
You have an attractive wife
Yeah,
backstage,
I do. Yeah.
but no problem. No problem.
Well,
Fred, do
we
you have a
don't want
problem
to get
with
into that.
attractive women?
This isn't Dr. Phil.
Okay.
Come on.
You brought it up, man.
I know you freaked me out the last time when you start with the personal
I did
question.
freak you out.
First.
I freaked you out. I could tell.
You do good interviews, but you get in there.
Yeah.
You get in there. And
I don't feel like anyone can get in there with you, Fred.
Oh, you got in there with
You're
me.
in a character.
I don't know. You got
I
in
feel
there.
like you were like, okay, this guy is like doing this thing. I'm going to engage in this particular way, but there's still always a wall.
You perceive that wall. You got in there.
Okay.
It might just be that I'm shallow. It might be that there's not much to me. Have you ever thought of did you ever think about that?
I think Fred has a problem with attractive women. Anyways, never mind.
I find everyone attractive.
I did hear your Howard Stern interview. a while
Yes,
back,
and the Mark Maron
Here we
interview.
go, getting personal.
The Mark Maron interview, they were like comparing
Yeah.
the women that they both had problems with.
But we're here to talk about drums.
We weren't
there,
talking,
Joe.
but we weren't like we have problems with these women. We were like saying like, oh, you dated so and so, so did I. It was all very. I found it to be very positive.
Yeah, it was great. Okay,
Am I wrong
when
about-
I interviewed Fred for the first time, this was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I was interviewing Fred, and halfway through the computer like crashed, and I didn't know it. And then Fred was nice enough to reconstruct the second half of the interview again. So I'm so happy that he came back. I thought he would never talk to me again.
Well, let's check on the hard drive on this one.
It's all fucked. This is an experience for these people. Who cares about the recording? Well, I
Aw.
do. It'll be fun. Okay, another question. So none of us are from Los Angeles, but we all live here. Fred, you live here part-time?
Part-time, yeah.
And Clem, too, you have a place in New York, too. But what is it about LA that drew you here, and how does it foster creativity?
I think the main kind of advantage of Los Angeles versus, say, New York or London at present is that the rent is cheaper. So you can take a little bit more time to figure your stuff out, discover who you are, what you want to do, how broad your art needs to be, who you want to collaborate with. Whereas in New York, it feels like there's a fire under your ass, and you have to pay the rent, and you have to get 4 cafe jobs, and you need to do a laundry list of things to be able to kind of survive.
Did you have 4 cafe jobs?
No, but I know a lot of people who did.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean that's why I moved over here.
You're like, I'm moving into Flea's house.
Yeah,
Screw this.
basically.
I'm not
Yeah, that
working
was
at a
my
fucking
long-term plan. So yeah, I think that's the more and more I think about it, I think that's why people are really attracted to the city. It's also quite livable. It's quite pretty and warm.
What brought you out here, Fred?
It is my favorite city in the world.
Wow.
I love it. I love Los
Come on.
Angeles so much, so much. I've always loved it. There's something about, it's just something about like when you drive. I love driving, which is like a great time as far as creativity goes to think about your projects. Mm-hmm. You're kind of on your own. You can listen to music. And there's something about when you sort of drive over a hill and like the houses are all, it's like nighttime and like you can see all the sparkly lights coming out of them. You just feel like you're in heaven. Like this is how life should be, and you can live in a decent home and there's some dignity to the places that you live. You're like, I've got this extra room, there's the backyard, there's but you're still in a city. There's so much culture in the city, and really old American culture. The culture of film and show business goes back so far now that it is a true part of America. And I just love it. I love the studios. I love downtown. I love the tacos. I love the sushi. I love the coffee. Visiting people. I love, you go to someone's house. You're like, this is great. Wow, this is your living room. It's just great. And you could be anything. I just feel like you can make up a job for yourself. I'm going to do horror makeup for music videos, that are shot in black and white. And then all of a sudden you're that person. That's what you do. Everyone's like, okay, great. That's what you do.
No, it's true. I was like, I'm going to do a podcast only about drummers. And it can happen here because people come. Yeah. Clem, what brought you out here?
The music business, I suppose, for all intents and purposes, and a girlfriend, and I think there's quite a bit of similarity between, obviously, between Los Angeles and New York, other than LA being a lot more user-friendly. I agree with that. There's like just the whole history of the business. If we're involved in that, it's kind of cool, and I agree with what Fred's saying about all that. I just wound up, spending more time out here. The band I had right after Blondie with Steve. I'm actually the reason why Steve Jones is here, actually. We put him on a plane, took him from New York, just about to land, and we had to immediately go see somebody for him, and he got well after a while, and he's been here ever since. I kind of been here ever since that, too. That was in 84, 83 maybe. So it's user-friendly, Mm-hmm. I don't really like the freeway, I think people are like, the cars are like heads, all you see is somebody's head in the car, and that becomes the person, whether are they in a Mercedes, are they in a Volvo, or are they in a junk car, and you kind of like put that all together, and that becomes like what that person is, strangers, not, when you get to know people, but it's like, it's like all these moving heads, like talking heads, like driving around, and people are giving each other the finger and telling them to fuck off. If you walked up to somebody in Manhattan and gave them the finger, there'd be trouble. But you're in your car, and it's like, what's this? People flipping people off and shooting each other on the freeway and all that. That's kind of the negative side of LA. Let's face it. But I think if you're in show business, it's probably the best place to be.
Fred, who would you play with without getting any sort of remuneration or acknowledgement?
Musically?
Yeah.
Prince.
Uh-huh. Have you met Prince?
I have met Prince.
You have a fantastic Prince imitation.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for bringing it up.
Wait, so what was that encounter like? Was he aware of your imitation?
Oh, yeah. Well,
did he make you pancakes?
No. He had, at the SNL party, he had his own party. And I'm a huge Prince fan, and I went to his party, and it was pretty cool. It's the DJs and stuff with this little bar, and then they had a buffet with macaroni and cheese. And then
was it purple macaroni and cheese?
It was. It seemed like sort of fancy macaroni and cheese, and then
lobster mac and cheese.
It might have been. Except I think he might be.
He's vegan or something.
I think he's
right?
vegan.
Soy,
yeah, a cashew or something. But he's sitting at a table. And he was alone eating, and I was like, "Oh, this is my chance," because I want him to say something nice to me, And I was like, I approached his table, and I was like, "Oh, hi! I just wanted to tell you, I think you are the greatest ever." And he's like, "You know what I think the greatest ever is?" And I was like, "Yes." He's like, "This macaroni and cheese."
No way.
I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making that up. That really happened.
That's some good fucking mac and cheese.
And I had to get up from the table backwards. Like, when you don't know if someone's joking or not, or if they're like totally. So I had to, awkwardly, smile and go, and then, stand up and walk away from the table. But I'll always cherish it. I got to meet Prince.
That's the only thing he said to you? You just left?
Yeah, what can I say?
Yeah.
Come
you
on,
like,
or
yeah, pretty good.
That's what I got. That's what I deserved. Why was I? I should have brought something better, literally, to the table.
Not exactly a conversation opener.
Yeah, I mean, you can't come out of the gate with that. I should have said.
Yeah, right.
I should have started with Hey, how about this macaroni and cheese?
Yeah.
What's the recipe? Who made this? That's on me.
Is that something you thought about a lot afterwards? Where you're like, fuck, I should have said that.
Absolutely. What kind of timing was that? Also, while he's eating? That's not the time to do that. I should not have taken advantage of that opportunity to sit at that table. That was the wrong time.
Wow.
But I got a good story out of it, and I did get to meet him. And he was, in his own way, in my crazy mind, nice enough. He wasn't mean to me. He was just being Prince.
When I interviewed...
He was doing his job.
When I had Sheila E. on the show, I was talking to her about Prince, and Sheila E. was making amazing records before Prince was even making records, and he was going after her because she was already a known entity, and I was like, you saw him and you were friends, and then you saw him change into this iconic, larger than life figure, and she was like, yeah, he's just a guy. Trust me, he's just a guy. I'm like, maybe to you, but I was scared of her. I mean, she was projecting power too. So
I found his voice to be very male, like really low. Like he's something
a fucking
very,
male.
Very, like, there's a powerful low quality to his voice.
Stella, who would you play with? Who is there a particular artist that you've always wanted to play with or fantasized about playing with?
I'd love to go back in time and play on those early Brian Eno records.
With Phil
I
Collins?
think. No, instead of. Yeah.
Well, he double-tracked the
Doesn't
drums. FYI, I mean, there's like double hi-hat, so you could have been one of the hi-hat.
I'm gonna double-track the
Oh,
drums.
you're going to
Yeah.
fuck him?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
He double-track the hi-hats?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sounds like a
There's
delay
one in the
though.
left and one on the right.
That's cool.
Sorry, got a little bit nerdy up here.
That's
but
okay.
You guys came to a drum podcast. What do
Yeah.
you expect? All right, so you know what? We're gonna open it up to questions, but first, let's have a great big round of applause for our Okay, so there's a microphone on the side of the stage,
This is great.
and you guys can ask questions to any of these people.
Today's episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Keplinger Drums. Since the 70s, Greg Keplinger has distinguished himself as an innovator, handcrafting one-of-a-kind snare drums out of stainless steel, copper, brass, and black iron. Greg's stylistically versatile drums have been played by everyone from Elvin Jones to Matt Cameron. You can check out keplingerdrums.com for more information or visit his Instagram page to see examples of his work.
What made you, or what's the moment that made you become a drummer?
Are you asking all of us?
Ask all.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Oh, okay.
You go first, Clem.
I'm left-handed, and I picked up a Mickey Mouse guitar when I was a little kid, and it was really complicated to learn how to play the guitar adequately because all my friends were playing it right-handed. And so I took a drum lesson, and I sat down at the drums right-handed and kind of took to it right away. And actually, my dad was a drummer, and that's basically how I did it, how it started, yeah. But, you know, I really like drumming, like to, you know, because you're kind of like in the middle of it, like you're kind of like, I don't want to say you're controlling it, but it's like you're listening, you know, like it's natural to tap your foot or something or clap along, but when you're playing drums, you're actually playing the music with the rest of the band, so. If that makes any sense.
For me, it was when I was a kid, we lived in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. My dad had to work there. So we had these samba parades, all these like samba players, and a bunch of them had these snare drums, and the sound was just so great. So as a kid, I remember thinking that I really wanted to do that, to play the drums.
Mine's a little embarrassing. I saw Hanson on MTV when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and there was this kid who was my age who was killing the drums, and I thought I can probably do that as well. Yeah.
Did you think you could do it better?
Not at the time. No, I really respected him.
You saw them live or on television?
No, on television.
Those guys are good musicians.
Yeah.
Well, one of them
Still
is in a
playing.
band with one of
with
our
Bunny,
guests, Bunny.
with Bunny Carlos, yeah.
So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Tinted
and
Windows.
Bunny
James
from
Eha.
Cheap Trick?
Yeah, Bunny, James Eha.
And which
and,
one?
the
Taylor?
Taylor, I think.
Taylor's, yeah.
Ooh. What's the band called?
Tinted Windows.
Tinted Windows.
Of course.
Oh, good name.
Actually, I had a band called Magic Christian, and we played along with Tinted Windows up in San Francisco a couple years ago. They're great.
Wow.
They're really good. It's the guy from Fountains of Wayne, too.
Yeah.
Who's a really
Adam.
great songwriter,
There you go.
too.
Yeah.
The first time I ever played with a guitar player, I was 12, and the only songs he knew were Enter Sandman by Metallica, Life on the Drop by Stevie Ray Vaughan, and House of the Rising Sun. And like 5 seconds into playing with the guitar player, feeling the music combine in the room, I had goosebumps all up and down my body, and the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up, and I knew that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And we just kept playing those 3 songs over and over and over until my parents made us quit. So, all right, who's got another question?
This is kind of one of those questions that's not really a direct question, but it relates to all of you, but especially you, Fred, because you have a strange mind that seems to like imprint things. And I wonder if it started with music, because it seems like you really capture the essence of a drum in a song, but you do it with people too. So you're like picking up on rhythm, and you could probably impersonate me really interestingly right now. But like, what's going on with your mind, and do you feel like it started with drums that actually helped you impersonate people?
Well, let me see if I could do you first. I think
Thank you.
Because I think some of your volume at the top of when you sometimes you're up here, and then sometimes you kind of come back a little bit. And you sort of, there's a sort of rolling when you're talking, and then you just kind of stop. No, I think it was.
Wait, now do Clem.
Yeah, a lot of these guys back then, they came around and they showed up with 2 fucking things and they dropped them all, and I said, yeah, great, because I saw the Ramones and London and record. Is it probably music or something? It's hard for me to I haven't been able to really think about where it all came from or whatever, but it's just like some of it is just trying to make my dad laugh, and some of it was just really being into music and trying to mimic the people who I admired. But that's very nice of you, by the way. Thank you. I'm going to take that as a compliment.
It was. Well, the comic timing thing seems really interesting too. Like, as a drummer, timing's really important. As a comedian, it's really important, and maybe you're drawn to comedy, for instance, in part because of the timing.
It's even more than that. I think that drummers, it's like a really weird role to pick in the band, and it worked well for me at Saturday Night Live in that, like, you kind of want all the attention, you want to show off, but you don't want to be at the front. You're like, not like, look at me, you're like, oh no, I'm just back here, but you're still got cymbals and like all this gear and your arms are going. So I think, and my feeling is that, like, with sketches and being with other comedians and stuff, I wanted to always play that role with, like, not really wanting to be center stage, but still trying to get attention.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Great question, thanks.
Yeah.
What about the answer?
Whoa, okay.
Great answer.
The great answer, too.
Thank you.
You're so successful and you still need so much approval.
Yes.
What's up with that? Is that why you're successful? Is that what drives your success? You always want to make your dad laugh in the back of your mind?
I'm going to be honest with you about something. I feel like I don't need that much approval. I was making a joke now about the answer. That's just to get a laugh. But I don't feel like, I don't beat myself up or like, I didn't get enough attention. I feel like I've gotten plenty. Like, I like, joking around and stuff,
like
but I
more and more?
don't feel like, give it to me. I need, it's got to be bigger. I don't suffer from that. Okay. I feel a total gratification, total satisfaction with, I feel lucky, but I don't suffer from like, oh, it's not, it wasn't enough.
Right.
I promise you. I promise you.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was just a joke.
Okay.
Before, yeah.
Yeah, so my question's for Clem. You followed after Marky Ramone was fired from the Ramones.
Richie Ramone.
Oh, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I thought
yeah,
you...
no, Richie, yeah. Anyhow.
So, at the 3 Ramones drummers, aside from you, who were your favorite, like, to play like, if you had to...
Who was my favorite which?
Drummer of the Ramones.
Oh, of the Ramones. Oh, Tommy Ramone by far. Yeah, Tommy was very interesting because, he wasn't a drummer, which is kind of like where the whole kind of a punk rock aesthetic came from, didn't it? So he did it out of necessity, and he was, producer, songwriter, and his minimalist approach was something that it influenced me in the fact that I was able to witness him doing that, and he was approaching drums in a very different kind of way, actually playing for the song. Technically, both Richie and Marky are very technically proficient drummers. Richie's a big band drummer. Marky was in a band called Dust.
Mark Bell, his name was back then.
Yeah, he was in a band called Dust, and he was, it's very difficult to play the drums in the Ramones. It really was, But Tommy Ramone's definitely my favorite. I mean, the original Ramones were, a friend of mine's, they're mastering their first album right now, the 40th anniversary. I mean, that album's impeccable, it's work of art. It's great. They're all good, though. It's, you know, like I was saying backstage, they're kind of like Jimi Hendrix times 4 now, or Jim Morrison times 4. You know, death is a big selling point. You know, just look at you know, with David. You know, that's like the biggest, greatest marketing scheme I've ever heard of. You know, put out your album and then drop dead the next day. It's like awesome.
Well, you have a new album coming out, Clem. Do we have one more question?
Thank you.
You have somebody else? Yeah, go ahead.
What made you guys agree to be interviewed by Joe? Was it a previous interview you had heard and said, if that guy did it, that lady did it, then, you know, I agree to it? Or did he approach you, or did you reach out to him?
We're all really, really old friends.
Joe's great. This show is just great. I listened to it.
Yeah.
It's so, it's just right. The tone is right. His curiosity is really, really great. It's just such a good show. I really love it. And if you're a fan of drumming and drummers, it's the way to go. Plus, there's no drum set up where people are playing. So it's just really, the absence of that, it's a really interesting choice.
Well, for me, it's like, I just want to know who these people are. And the fact that we're all drummers is almost incidental. It's an entry point, and then we can talk about life. And we have like a unique thing in common to draw from if the conversation lulls. But other than that, I really just want to know who these people are. And I'm such a huge fan of all of them. And so I can tell you, I met Fred because I was on tour with some folks that he's friends with, and I met Clem through another drummer that was on the show, Dale Crover, and I just reached out to, I reached out to Stella through, who did I reach out through?
Email. Gmail.
There you go.
Yeah.
Gmail.
Mm-hmm.
Google.
Yeah.
One more question.
This is for Fred. I know you've done Blue Jean Committee. Have you thought of maybe doing like a jazz fusion thing with Jens Hahnemann?
Oh, yeah. So that was this DVD that was a fake drummer, like a drum instruction that I would put out through Drag City. Yeah, I want to do more with him. I kind of wanted to do like a jazz drummer character, because some jazz drumming, the thing that's so frustrating about it is they barely play. You know, it's I'm always like, play, please, give me something. So I don't know what the idea is yet, but something in there. Yeah, but thanks for asking about it.
Do you want to ask a question, sir?
I assume y'all tap on everything like steering wheels and tables. Like, what's your favorite thing to tap on outside of drums?
People. Butts.
Breasts.
Yours or other people's?
Mine.
Okay.
Exclusively.
Sometimes if you have sticks, the bottom of your sneaker is kind of a good one.
Pillows are good.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
develops
like
your
pillows.
muscles.
Yeah, that's the old technique, actually, practice technique to play on a pillow instead of something that has a response. A pillow, you have to kind of, it's a little different.
All right. Are you going to ask a question too, sir? All right. One more question and then we're out.
And so you all are just great musicians, and I guess I'll just get to the point. Have you ever had like an existential crisis with your music? Have you ever asked yourself, just like, I've been doing this, but has it ever been not fulfilling?
Yeah, I changed my career.
Oh, that's right.
I had moments where I watched band after band become more famous than me, and I was just like, this is not working. This is not, we were on the same tour over and over again, and we tried our best. We put out records, flyers, we toured like crazy, and it was just the same, no exaggeration, I'm gonna say 17 people at every show. So I had a huge crisis where I was like, what is this? What am I doing? And that was the end of that.
Clem, existential crisis?
Existential crisis. Well, I am always kind of questioning things about, why am I doing this and all. So, yeah, I mean, daily probably for me, I was never really too hung up on what was going to happen next. I kind of just let it all happen. So in that way, it kind of just all kind of seemed to work most of the time, and just enjoyed playing music. So actually, it kind of takes me out of my existential ennui, really, and brings me to a different place. So, but I mean, if you're hung up about trying to be a success and all that kind of stuff, that's definitely going to create a crisis.
I think the biggest problem is that it was my hobby when I was a kid, and it's the thing that I was most passionate about, but I never really believed that I could do it for a living. And then when it happened, there was this fear of it kind of going away for the first few years. And then I think the only thing that really helps with that is perspective, like why you're doing it, why you're satisfied when you do it, and also time. The longer you get away with it, the better the chance you're going to get away with it tomorrow.
Are you in an existential crisis right now?
Yeah, I was wondering.
Always.
Yeah.
But don't
that's normal, though.
But don't let that discourage you. That's probably a good thing that you're
Yeah.
overly confident about what you do. That's great that you question it. It'll make you better.
I've interviewed over 100 drummers now, and I think to a certain extent everybody has those feelings. And that's the whole reason I started this show. At the time, my girlfriend at the time wanted to have kids, and I was barely making enough money to support myself by playing music and writing music. And so I was like, okay, how do I figure this out? Oh, I know. This guy, Brendan Canty from the band Fugazi, has like 800 kids. I'll ask him how he does it. He seems like a good guy. That's the whole impetus for doing it. I'm trying to figure out how to get through life by asking everybody else how they navigate through life. So yeah, and it solved it. Hey, give a big round of applause to our panel. Thank you so much for coming out, guys. We really appreciate it. Clem Burke, Fred Armisen, Stella Mozgawa. Give it up, folks. Thank you so much. The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit iTunes or our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, share The Trap Set with a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.